So, hello. Yeah, my name is Vadim Justus. I'm from Germany and working as head of e-commerce at Tech Division. So, I was previously asked regarding my talk why I wrote it together here. So it's German. So Germans like stick words together and became bigger words, so pipeline pattern. But what is my talk about is it's regarding a new kind of pattern, probably already known pattern to you, but it's something which is not normally used in default e-commerce systems. And we stick with some problems regarding huge amount of cron jobs you have in your ecosystem for all the background processes you have, and tried something different, stick to this, and had pretty good experience with it. So I just want to share it with you, what we did and how it was started. So first of all, I will just tell you a little bit regarding why this decision to do something else, then where this patterns came from and where you probably already heard about it or already used it, and how we implement our solution, how it works for us, and our experience with it. So first of all, why? As you know, in an e-commerce system, you have always, regarding your own shop, also different systems in the whole ecosystem which needs to interact with your store, right? And so here just a couple of them. So probably a product information system and ERP system which needs to interact with the store, and probably you have also the capability here that always, or mostly, the ERP systems are not the fancy new stuff technology. They always like to use like CSV files or XML files which needs to push somewhere, so you probably have also kind of FTP or any kind of file exchange regarding the system. So as you can see here, you need different ways how data comes into your store. So you have products, categories, attributes, all this stuff. You have stocks and prices. You have orders. You have also order updates. You have customers and many more. So it became, the bigger your system became, the more background processes are there. And this is not like usually drafts where you just see one arrow here or one arrow there. But these are different entities you need to share between the systems and different times, or with different ways how to share real time or async and however. So the most approach you have, and also the technology which Magento provides you, is like add some kind of cron job, right? And so here such a few, but in a normal Magento installation you have hundreds of them. Yeah, you have hundreds different processes which are scheduled for somehow anywhere in during the day, or probably once a week or however. Yeah. So for example, such processes like product import. Yeah. So if you still run with kind of, you need to proceed a big CSV file or something like this, you probably create a cron which does all these things, including reindexing and cache invalidation, probably cache warming and all this stuff. And this became a really big and complex script, which is hard to test, hard to change or extend. So it became pretty complex. It also probably also have kind of abstraction of them for deltas and stuff like this. Then stuff like price imports, for example, which is need to be a different way. So probably this data came from a product information system. This data came from an ERP system. So now you have the problem. You need to write in some kind same entity, so it's all regarding products, right? But you have different sources for it, and so you have also different processes for it, which can collidate probably. Yeah? So the simple cron schedule does not allow you to make kind of dependencies between them which were explicit. There are just implicit there. Yeah? So you probably run in kind of deadlocks or something like this, but to handle it, it became even more difficult and even more complex scripts. And also processes which we always seen in systems we profile, like for example order exports, which running once an hour. And here you have kind of processes which running probably here where no orders were placed, so they're running for less, so they do nothing because there are no orders there. Somewhere in the middle of the day, they probably have to also proceed multiple orders. So you have one process which is working with multiple entities. And so I think, who is developer? Yeah, it's a developer conference. I like it. So as you know, PHP is not really stateless. So of course you can write your code that you don't have kind of state or clean all the stuff you do, but you still have dependencies to libraries. I fixed in the last contribution day in Munich issue also regarding the persistence layer of Magento, which was not really stateless. Yeah, so there is some kind of cache inside, and so if you handle multiple orders in one process, you can probably have mess for the second order from the first one. Yeah, so it's always better to run in some kind of not shared state or single responsibility processes, right? So, and of course, also a problem you have pretty often with crons is if you have multiple of them and you have probably a wrong status of one of them in your database, so the whole schedule does not match anymore or does not schedule new jobs for you. So just summarize, we have pretty big and complex scripts there which don't have explicit dependency, which not responsible for, or it's hard to manage that they are responsible for each entity, so there are kind of with shared state. So we have probably missed jobs in the schedule, and this all results in some kind less scalability, less usability, and so on and so forth. So also the wish as a developer have repeatable processes. So I wish if probably my import breaks and in some point of the process that I can just restart it from this point where it is broken. So probably there was just a configuration gap. I fixed the issue and then can just proceed again. Yeah. So repeat the last two steps, for example. Also, how to visualize this stuff to probably a merchant who's working in the backend and does not understand what happens in the background. How to reproduce issues on my local or test environment. So I just can say, this process was broken, pull it here and repeat so that I can debug it and stuff like this. Monitoring of all the stuff, so I need kind of alert if there's something broken and things. And also, of course, reduce the runtime of my processes here. So, and yeah, how does the pattern look like, and how we found this pattern probably. So I asked you previously who's developer, so at least one logo here you should know. Yeah, does anybody know none of them? Yeah, great. So these are tools which already use PipelinePattern. So as developer, you know you are able to build deployment pipelines, for example. Yeah, so you don't create Probably a few years ago, we created huge scripts which were running, building our software, push it somewhere else, re-index, reinstall, however. Now we build pipelines. So we split up the process into multiple steps. We declare it with a configuration like YAML or something like this, and we have a pipeline. So we have repeatable steps here. So this is a screenshot from GitLab pipelines. So you can see here we have multiple stages, multiple jobs in there. So each stage has probably also different jobs, and we're able to repeat each of them. Yeah, we're also able to repeat the whole pipeline. So it's pretty easy to debug, pretty easy to monitor all the stuff. We have also kind of visualization of all these things. So the idea was how to bring this also into Magento. So how can we stop using big, complex scripts and start using kind of configuration language for our processes, so also do process modeling on here. Yeah? So if we look how GitLab pipelines works, we see at first there is kind of configuration file. So for example, in GitLab, you have the GitLab CI YAML, or you have a Travis YAML, or you have a Jenkins configuration file. Yeah? And then there are kind of runners. So this is also new especially for pipelines. So when Jenkins also moved to pipelines, they started also with runners. So you have kind of worker which are doing the job for you, but they're doing it on another machines probably. So it's also kind of scalability we have here. And you have, of course, a logic which initializes for you this pipeline. So probably it happens by an event, like you push something somewhere else, or probably it's scheduled like a cron. So say once a day, I want to run a daily build or something like this. So if you look into the internet and the World Wide Web, there are some lectures and also books you can find regarding pipeline patterns. So it's really a common existing pattern which is also added to GitLab and Jenkins. So they're using this pattern. I will share the slides afterwards if you don't have the chance to. Okay, one photo. Enough. So if we summarize the concepts behind this we can find in the net, we will see there is kind of a logic which needs to define stages. So we need to split up our process into stages. So it's something different like tasks, because a stage is a point of the process where I can say, so it's like developing process. So every time you're ready to create a new commit, it's a stage. Yeah? So if you're working on a feature, you commit multiple times. So every time you commit is some kind of a stage probably. Yeah? So you have something ready, an artifact or something reliable is there. So. And at least every stage has one task. Yeah? There are multiple runners which can execute these tasks. So at least one, of course, but usually multiple. We're able to run the stages. So we're able to run tasks in parallel, but the limitation there is the stage. So I cannot run tasks from my second stage when my first stage isn't ready yet. Yeah? And same, we are also limited by number of runners. So if I just have one runner, I can only proceed one task at once. So it does not matter when if a stage has multiple tasks, they will be processed task by step, right? So this also results in kind of SPMD logic. So what we need here or SPMD is like spooling of a printer. So if you have multiple printers in your office and you have multiple workers who want to print, they want to spool all this jobs, and the printers will work it down. So if you have the same amount of printing requests like printers, you will do it in parallel. Yeah, we need kind of logic which transfer the data between the stages. So it's not reliable that our runners are responsible for sharing this data. So we need to share this data with our overall logic, yeah? So which is completely responsible for the whole pipeline or for the whole process. So all these words in a picture. This is how a pipeline can look. So just a single process which was split up into 4 stages, where every stage has at least one task, right? So if this stage has 2 tasks, it looks like this. So it's pretty easy. If we are currently ready with this and this both can be executed. If this is ready but this not, this cannot run because this depends on both, and so pretty easy, yeah? Picture is always easy. So for example, how could a product import look like a pipeline, yeah? So how would it look like? It looks like, so this task I mentioned before, yeah? It could look like this, yeah? So it's, of course, a little bit more complex than the simple draft before, but this could be a product import which is similar to this single task, right? No. So so here we see kind of fetching data. We can now probably transform data in parallel. So we have different entities. We can do it in parallel. We need to import it in a kind of a sequence probably, but afterwards we have some additional tasks like cache warm up or invalidate cache or reindex. So there are also steps which can be run in parallel or not. Yeah? For example, if we also, I mentioned there are no explicit dependencies between them. So with pipelines it's possible using kind of conditions. Yeah? So you can just manage it in a more in a finer way, so that you don't need to say, I need to wholly complete this one script completely in order to start the next one, but you can depend on the stages. So if you say this stage is ready, I can probably execute price import. It does not matter whether there is still a kind of cache invalidation or warming or whatever is running, right? So how our solution looks like, we just introduce own schema, so for XML, so that you can just add in every of your modules pipeline XML and define a process there. So for example, also here I choose kind of an import, and now we created such kind of flexible stages here because we thought it's hard to say it's only one dedicated stage we need to choose because probably you have steps which are independent from each other but can run in parallel, so you can depend on something else. So your stages can be dynamic. Yeah, they changes every time you check which stage is there. So we use conditions for it. So it's pretty easy. We define a pipeline, give them a name, probably a description which can be displayed in an admin front end. And then we just add conditions which define where to start this pipeline. So probably is execution time reached here as an example. So it doesn't mean it does not it's not necessary for this import to run exactly at 3:00 in the night, right? So it's completely okay if it's running somewhere in between 1 and 5 o'clock, and so that can be also a flexible condition, right? But there are also another conditions like files are there, so probably we're waiting that the product information system is pushing some files somewhere, and it is in between our time frame, and there is no import running currently, so we can start a new import. It's also possible to add here conditions, for example, like how does the resources of my machine look like? So are there too many customers right here, right now there, and I'm not able to run an import and need the power for fulfill orders and stuff like this. So as next, we add steps into this pipelines. And each step has its own executor, so it's just a simple PHP file which will be executed, and there are also conditions for this step. So these steps define the stage and also other rules how this step can be executed. Yeah. So for example, we just add conditions which called stage. So stage transformation. Stage transformation. This means these both steps can be executed in parallel, right? And then the import step, another stage, and this stage just says I can only run if the other both are ready, and stuff like this. So, and behind all this conditions and the executors you seen in the definition, there are pretty simple interfaces. You just need a kind of pipeline condition interface, step condition interface, and executor, and they are pretty easy to use. Just is ready, yes or no, and also proceed the execution of the whole process. So as I told before, there also required a logic which is handling all this stuff. So we need a logic over all this. So our conditions and executors and the steps are pretty easy to implement. So just do something. Yeah, it's easy to test because I can just instantiate it in some kind of unit test, mock it, and run it. Yeah, but we need the overall logic which handles all this stuff. So we need initialization of pipelines. So something in my system need to check. Am I ready to start a new pipeline? And am I ready to force the execution of a step, right? So therefore, we introduce two entities in our system. One of them called heartbeat and the other one called runner. And the heartbeat is the overall controlling part, which just checking are there conditions which are ready for initialize a new pipeline? If there are, they just create a pipeline entry in a database, right? And the next step, they check whether this pipeline has conditions which are ready to execute the one step. And if so, they push this as kind of a message to the RabbitMQ. So this is also the spooler, the printer spooler I told before, right? And the next one was just to aggregate the current state of my process of my pipeline. So because it's not that easy to say pipeline is ready or not, or is running or however, because it depends on which state are all my steps and which states are allowed for the steps. So after pushing a step to the RabbitMQ, the runner starts to execute it, and this is also necessary here that SPMD is only fulfilled if you have runner which are not dedicated to one executor. So they need completely to be stateless and be able to execute every kind of step and message here. So only this way you are able to start runners on different servers wherever you want, and they are able to execute your job, right? So overall, there is a cron job, which is just a heartbeat which run every minute, and it's pretty easy and fast because it does not pretty much. It's just check some condition and push stuff to RabbitMQ and so on, but this does not execute any hard job which is part of the runners, right? And the runners we introduce, we also use the Magento framework with the AMQP integration, which is also part of the community since, I think, 2.3. So you can just run a pipeline runner like a consumer of this RabbitMQ, and you can run multiple of them. For example, using supervisor, you can just say, I need 30 of them, for example. Yeah? So you have 30 processes, which is able to run up to. So 30 is a pretty big time number. We normally use something like 4, 5, and we have 40 in one project, but these are on different servers. So there is also kind of interface for command line tool. So you can, you're able to check what is the status of my pipelines. You're able to initialize new and stuff like this. I need to hurry up. So this is how the output could look like for such pipelines. So you can pretty easy detect whether there was an issue. You can pretty easy to, so I think I missed some slides. You can pretty easy say, just show me the log of this one. And you have the same in the admin backend, so that you can pick one of this, just click on one of these bubbles here and you see the whole log of this job. So it's pretty similar like you know it from GitLab, right? So what process pipeline changed in our company, for example, was how we thought about processes and how to design them. So there's also kind of mindset shift here, because, for example, stuff like this, I told you before, is hard to handle because we have not stateless PHP here, and probably there are multiple orders to execute. So using pipelines, you're able to create kind of one pipeline which just initialize new pipelines. I see this slide isn't translated. Sorry, sorry for this. But this one pipeline initialize new, so that you can start a pipeline for each order. And you don't start a pipeline for each order just to export it. You can also visualize the whole workflow of this process. So like you need to export it, you need to import invoices, you need to import probably shipments, you need probably import credit memos, something like this. And you can present to the merchant a completely new kind of visualization of this order, so they see the whole process which was happening with the order, or which is still in pending here. Yeah? And it does not like having a process which is idling. It's more like just an entry in the database which is waiting to be executed, right? So it does not cost you resources to have unfinished pipelines. So there is because I told a lot of stuff regarding imports, there is a import framework which is open source. I think the number is not the right one. I think it's 1 year ago that I take the screenshot. So there is a completely new version, but this was designed in order to run imports into Magento in a kind of parallel way. So it was designed for AppServer.io, which was also project of Tectivision, and we used this framework also to run it into pipelines, and were able to run, for example, so split up a CSV file into multiple files and run it in parallel into the database, stuff like this. So we also created a product for us out of this pattern, so it's a little bit advertising in the end. So that this is a extension you can buy from Tectivision, and it also used this import stuff and already ready to use pipelines and all the stuff I told you before. Of course, the main benefit of my speech should be to share our experience with this and give them a try. Try to separate your processes into multiple stages and run it on different machines at the same time, and it works pretty good. Thank you.
Thank you, Vadim. And now we have time for some questions, so please don't hesitate and go ahead.
Hello. Thank you for a great story. And my question is following. Which database are you using, and how many pipelines can work in parallel?
So we're using the MySQL of Magento. So for this implementation, we just need to add 2 additional tables. So it was pipeline entity and pipeline entity steps. So that's all. That's pretty all. And of course, we're using RabbitMQ. So like it's also designed by Magento. So you just have consumer and a new queue, which you need to register. So it's nothing more. And how many pipelines are running in parallel? It depends. So we have a client. He has it's an AWS system, and they have a dedicated backend node where currently I think up to 20 runners are running, and this is pretty amount the processes they execute at the same time. And we also had a peak there where we was just able to rise up new backend nodes and start additional runners there so that we can proceed whatever you want. I think the database will be the bottleneck in the end, but it depends what you do. So normally not all of these processes you'd have there are kind of writing processes. There is also can be an export of an order, so you don't just have read operations. So yeah, it depends on the processes in the end. Yeah.
Hello, thanks for pipelines. It's really nice, but can you clarify about the availability model? Is it, can we buy it, or how it's spread? And okay, and I want to ask the second question. Do you plan to add more like supporting of brokers? For example, we don't use GitLab, so can we execute them from, okay, can we use it in different scenarios, for example, from places where we trigger it from the requests?
Yeah.
Like,
so, yeah, thank you. So first question, yeah, you just write me a mail and we can share the details regarding this. We will also have kind of, how does it called, Dodo? Solution partner program regarding this, because it's also more like how to design processes and how to integrate these processes into Magento. You can buy it from Tech Division right now. It's not in the marketplace. So, and the second question was regarding running it without GitLab. Yes, of course, because you're completely independent from GitLab. It does not depend on any kind of these technologies I showed you, because it's a own implementation inside Magento, which is pretty similar to the things like GitLab do. So you have runners, you have configurations of these pipelines inside Magento, and it's completely independent to Jenkins or something else or GitLab, so it does not harm. Does it answer your?
Yeah. Actually, okay. Yes, thank you.
So I will take. We have time for the last question, and then we can join Vadim after the presentation and ask him any questions. Okay, so I'm not up to date with the project that started 2 or 3 months ago on Slack, on Magento Community Engineering Slack. But do you consider sharing your knowledge and experience with the project of cron replacement? Because I see that you did the tremendous work with reaching out the issues that Magento actually have with running processes. And 2 or 3 months ago, the discussion about the cron replacement started. So are you willing to spread the knowledge?
Yeah, I'm sorry, what kind of replacement?
Just rewriting the crons to not depend only on cron jobs.
Okay. To be honest, I'm not that deep in these discussions. I need to read it and take into look. So we started this 2 years ago. So our first implementation of these pipelines was for 2 years ago, and we're just starting right now to bring it like our own product. Yeah, sounds interesting. Probably we can also push our. We will definitely share our information there if it fits. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.